Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Fatia and I'm going to be your host for today. So we're going to get started. So thank you so much for coming to this event. We're going to be talking about a whole host of important topics with our panelists, who I will introduce after the reminder, inshallah. And we're going to touch upon things such as race, identity, activism, empowerment, and like so much more. So the reason that this event was created by our amazing creators, Sarah and Laman, was because they're so important. Like, these topics are so important, and they're important that we discuss them and bring them to light. So Sarah, who was someone who created this event for Isoc, is going to do a little reminder for us.
Assalamualaikum everyone. So my name is Sarah. I am the head of student affairs at the Isoc. So like anything related to student activism or Black History Month or Islamophobia Awareness Month is like all under my remit. So I wanted to just do a brief reminder for you guys, and it's about a skill that I think is really important for us as Muslims to kind of develop. So when it comes to self-development, the skills that are always sort of emphasized are things such as leadership or time management or public speaking. And these are obviously really important skills, but I think one that's often undermined is the skill of listening. So often we're really eager to have like our views, our opinions, our own thoughts and viewpoints heard, but how often do we actually actively listen to others, not with the intention of responding back or having a debate or sharing our viewpoint, but to genuinely hear their thoughts and experiences. And the Prophet ﷺ, one of his own sort of characteristics was that he was a really good listener, and that helped him in terms of being empathetic and also being a good speaker as well. So with regards to today's talk, the reason why I'm saying this is because I think it's really important that we kind of put everything to the side and we actually actively listen and engage with the speakers that have taken the time out to come in and speak to us today about their experiences, even if it's ones that we ourselves have not experienced. So barakallah feekum for attending, and please do try and actively listen and engage with the speakers.
Okay, so now I'm going to introduce our guests. So first of all, we have Momodou, also known as the Gambian, on his social media pages. And he talks about a range of different things such as racism, politics, critical race theory, and male body positivity, which is actually a very important topic. All of this is also discussed on his podcast known as The Malcolm Effect. And he also features on the Baraka Boys podcast as well. Another speaker we have for today's panel talk is Naima B. Roberts. So I love this woman so much. Like, she's such an inspiration to me. And Mufti Menk has had the pleasure of writing a book with her. Like, that is such an honor for him to be able to write a book with her. Like, I just think it's amazing. So she writes books, from picture books for children to young adult fiction books too. Besides this, she also runs workshops. She runs international conferences and programs for the empowerment of women. So this woman is just amazing. And it's such a pleasure to have her today as one of our panelists. For her books, I will try and put the link in the chat box so you can check them out, inshallah. And last but not least, we also have Ayo Olatunji. So he is a fourth year medic from UCL, and he was the BME officer for the student union between his second and third years. He is currently the vice president of student affairs in Infosys. So we would have loved to have him here at the University of Manchester. Unfortunately, we got stuck with Sarah. I'm joking, like, she's very good. She, like I've said a million times, but it's just because I'm so proud of her. She ran this event, and he, like, Ayo talks about things such as racism and Islamophobia. So those are all important topics. And again, we're so happy to have him on this panel. So he is meant to be doing a reminder, but because like he's so busy, I'm not sure if he is here yet, so he may be doing that later on. So we're going to go into some questions with the panelists. So if they don't mind turning their cameras on and maybe unmuting themselves. Okay. So I'm gonna say some questions, and as either of you can answer them.
Okay, inshallah.
And we'll go from there.
Okay.
Oh, Ayol's here. Ayol, do you want to do your reminder now, or do you want to do it after the questions?
We can do after the questions, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah. So I've got them here. So the first question is, do you feel like you've ever had to choose between your race and your deen? So personally speaking, I feel like when I first started uni, I feel like there wasn't a power play between my two identities, but I feel like if I was with one group of people, like one part of me would come to like more. And then when I was like with a different group of people, like another part of me would be more like prominent. So, I mean, I don't know if that's like choosing between my races, but I feel like sometimes I have to kind of dampen down one part of me, or I've had to feel like that, or I felt like that. I don't feel like that happens anymore, but have any of you guys had a similar experience with something like that?
Is that for all of us, or is that for how are you gonna kind of choose who answers first? Everyone just kind of talks.
It's however you
just gonna jump in.
Okay, cool. I'll just, since I'm already talking anyway. I feel like it's only the case in places like England or America or Western countries where there is that false dichotomy of, are you Black or are you Muslim? Why is that the case? Because culturally Black expressions is somehow seen as un-Islamic, whereas the cultural expressions of, let's say, Arabs or Pakistanis is immediately accepted and given the green light of Islam. So what my teachers always say to me is that Islam is not a culture per se, it is a filter for culture. So it's, things that your culture, things that exist in your culture, if they kind of are in alignment or do not go against the kind of principle of the Sharia, it's fine. But the things that do, then they're considered not to be allowed. So in terms of back to your initial question of, do I feel like I have to choose in between? Only in places like England and America where Black Muslim heritage or the legacy of Black Muslims is not taught and not known. That's just my little answer.
Just to comment on that, I think that's a really good point. Really good points made. I think, I feel like in the beginning, myself being a Reaver, I think I definitely felt like, I feel like I had to choose that, it has to be one or the other. And the way, it wasn't always by explicit things, but to be honest with you, in the beginning, I thought Asian culture or South Asian culture was synonymous with Islam. That's just what I thought, because that was always what was pushed, right? Even maybe explicitly or subtly, whether it be in the masajid, there were little cultural things done, added to, acts of worship, different things. And I think it's only until I started to study, but also spend time with Black Muslims, that I realized that, that there's actually, this isn't, there have been other things that have been added onto it. And I think, there was one question I was asked once, which was, why can't you be African or Caribbean Muslims? Why does it have to be Black Muslims, right? And at the time when I was asked, I was like, I don't even know how to answer that question, but I feel that there's kind of a ignorance behind the fact that Black is like, it's a socio sort of political consciousness for people. And even you go to some parts of the world, because of slavery, they've never connected with the Caribbean or any African country that they originate from. So Black is their way of, it's like a hybridized kind of indigenous culture, but also the culture that they're in right now. And it's the way they express themselves politically and socially. There's so many aspects to it, right? So it's not as simple as, why didn't you rid yourselves of the label Black? It has to be African or Caribbean. So as Muslims, I think hopefully the conversations that's generated here, like, we actually need to have an understanding of our social and political context as well. We can't just be insular and it's like, I'm just going to learn about Islam in a vacuum, because Islam doesn't operate in a vacuum. So pass on to other panelists there too.
Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Wonderful to be here with you guys, and thank you for inviting me. I really find your question very poignant, because when I wasn't a Muslim and I was at university, I was in the African Caribbean Society. I was actually the president. And I was president of the African Caribbean Society, president of LONAS, and I had embraced a Black identity after growing up in Zimbabwe.
Wait, sorry, if those of you who are guests can mute yourselves, please. Thank you.
So similar to what Momodou was saying, you know, on the continent, Black is not a thing, because you are who you are. You are your people, you are your nation, you are your family. You know, if you're Yoruba, you're Yoruba. If you're, you know, a Mandinga, you're Mandinga. If you're Shona, Ndebele, Zulu, whatever. Being Black is not a thing, because it's just a part of who you are. And I think I only embraced a Black identity. I became Black when I came to the UK, when I came to the West, and all of a sudden, the fact that my mother's Zulu doesn't really mean anything anymore. You're just Black like everybody else. That's what Black people do. This is what Black people eat. This is how Black people talk, which of course is a hybridized culture, as what Momodou was saying. So for me, I accepted that, I embraced that. The identity is very much tied in with the Black political economic reality, as Aya was saying. It's almost like a historical legacy that you download. So when I came, my background is that my father is white and my mother's Black, and they're both South African. But when I came to the UK, I downloaded the diaspora Black experience. I downloaded slavery and colonialism and African-American people like Malcolm X, etc. I didn't know who they were. When I was growing up in Zimbabwe, we never learned about Malcolm X, because, you know, that's not our history, he's not from us. So anyway, I digress. Point is, I was in that, and I was finding myself within that. So when Islam came to me as something foreign that I felt I could not embrace while holding on to my Blackness. And it took me actually having to go to West Africa to actually go on my own like journey of discovery to see, is it possible to be a Black person, an African, and be a Muslim, you know, at all? Because what I was seeing in East London was basically Asian and Arab culture, etc. So my friend said to me, look, you know that there are African Muslims, don't you? And I was like, yeah, I kind of do know that. And she said, okay, well, why don't you go and see, you know, how that pans out? And just as Momodou was saying, if you do go to West Africa, or if you go to Africa, period, you will see that their Islam is a part of their identity, is who they are. It hasn't made them any less African. It hasn't made them any less cultured or cultural. And we now know the depth and richness of Islam's history in Africa. And in fact, that was something I learned in my A-levels in Zimbabwe. You know, the caliphates and the Sokoto Caliphate and Uthman Dan Fodio, we learned about that in Zimbabwe. So, you know, it very much is a kind of Western thing, a modern day thing, but it was difficult to kind of find yourself. You're at this intersection, because on the one hand, you have your Islamic identity and you traverse spaces as a Muslim. But then on the other hand, you traverse certain spaces as a Black person, and they're not always the same. I know they put us in this whole BAME category, but I'm sorry, a Black experience and a brown experience is different. A Black Christian and a Black Muslim experience is different. You know, just like a Hindu and a Muslim Asian, they're going to experience different. They're going to experience the world differently. They are going to walk in the world differently. So, you know, I don't know whether that answers your question, but it resonated with me, because it was actually a tension for me when I first embraced. Like, can I really hold on to my identity, my proud identity as an African, and still submit to Allah and become a Muslim? So, alhamdulillah.
Okay, thank you all of you guys for your responses. So another question that I have is, what does the word identity mean to you, and what makes up your identity? So again, starting with myself, I'd say like I'm a Black Muslim female, and I love every part of being like a Black Muslim female. However, sometimes if I do feel like I'm ever treated like negatively, sometimes I do wonder like, which part of my identity is it because of? Is it because I'm Black? Is it because I'm Muslim? I mean, I don't think it's usually because I'm female, but it's mainly the other two. So yeah, they all make up my identity, but then like it also has the negative aspect of which part of my identity is being negatively discriminated against. So yeah, to you guys, what does the word identity mean to you, and what makes up your identity?
May I just
And any of
respond
you
to
guys can
something
answer.
that you said? May I just respond to, or just ask a question to what you said? It's interesting to me that when we talk about identity in the West, our identity, Muslims,
Yeah.
Black people, even women, etc., it's almost always in relation to some kind of oppression,
Yeah.
some kind of pressure on you, right? Even the way you mentioned it, you said, this is my identity, and I'm not sure which one is being discriminated against. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy that the way that you identify yourself is based on how you're being discriminated against or how the world is impacting on you negatively? I think that's mad. I think that's mad. I think this place is sick. But anyway, that's for another conversation. Maybe you guys want to maybe speak to that. Do you feel that our identities as Muslims and as Black Muslim is very much shaped by the racialized and Islamophobic world that we live in? Or do you think that the identity comes from somewhere else?
100% Sister Naima, because if you even look at the construct of race, is racist in and of itself. The construct of race was born out by, they largely say the late 18th century, but by a German psychologist or anthropologist who said that race is clearly just how we demarcate people based on appearance. And they listed 5 originally. It was like Mongolian and Caucasian and Negroid race, and they kind of listed these things. So, but why? It was purely because, and that coincided with scientific racism, purely because they wanted to subjugate different people and needed the moral justification in the heads to subjugate people. So they created race. So race, the concept of race in and of itself is racist. Now, and your question, what you said about my identity, I think identity is funny because identity is only how you experience the other. As you said, Sister Naima, quite rightly so, there's no such thing as Black people in West Africa. Because a race only becomes relevant, or identity only becomes relevant when it is comparative into something, it's compared to something else. When everyone's Black in West Africa, I'm from Gambia, so my mom's Gambian, my dad's Senegalese, and I go back often. I don't think I'm a Black person there. It's, oh, he's a Wolof, he's a Mandinka, or he's the son of so and so. He's the son of so and so, daughter of so and so. He lived in this part of Gambia. It's clear. So it's interesting how when we come to the West, though, identity is such a big part of the discussion, and it's a shame because you clearly identify with the things that are used as tools of oppression, which I think is very sad. Obviously, yeah, I do identify as a Black Muslim man. And I think, however, it's very difficult because as much as I love my faith and I'm proud of my faith, people will sometimes say, you know, quite wrongly, are you Black or are you Muslim? You know, ask this very silly question, which I don't even know what that means because no one else has asked that, because obviously other races are given, they just assume to be Muslim. But why I think that's quite interesting, this topic, because if I'm honest with you, I can go out in the world and not be recognized as a Muslim, as a Black man. Unless I'm wearing a thobe or I'm wearing unfortunately my beard hasn't come yet, I'm still trying, it's the genes, but I can go, I mean, again, I don't wear, if I don't wear a thobe or wear a particular style hat, even if I'm wearing quote unquote West African clothes, they won't immediately assume that it's Muslim garb, that's a Muslim dress. So if I'm honest with you, as much as I am a Muslim and quite proudly so, in the world, my experience of that in the West is me as just a Black man.
Okay, thank you for that. And what about you, Ayo?
A very difficult question. I think like a lot's already been said. I mean, just to pick up, I definitely think there is this thing of when we look at identities, it is often from that negative kind of line. I think that kind of comes from, I think Kimberly Crenshaw has this whole thing of intersectionality as a concept. So how these different identities that we all hold, how they intersect with each other, but often elaborations on that concept that she coined or created is always from that negative mindset in terms of how structures of oppression are exerting upon us, right? And I think sometimes when I think about all these identities, I personally wouldn't introduce myself as I'm a Black Muslim man or Black Muslim Nigerian man or Black, yeah. Sometimes I feel like when all of these things start to come, when I start defining myself like, or introduce myself at least through all of these kind of concepts and labels too much, it kind of, personally, I feel like it does start to weigh down on me, because the connotations of describing all those things together, I find often are from that negative lens of how do structures of oppression come down on me. But I would describe myself, probably, I'm Yoruba originally, so I would describe myself as sort of Black Yoruba Nigerian man, Muslim man. But I feel like there's so many. Sometimes I feel like sometimes it comes a thing of like kind of listing all these kind of things of, you know, like, so I feel like, yes, these things are part of me and part of my identity, but I actually like to switch it up in terms of how do these things how do they positively sort of define me, if that makes sense. Yes, by the way, I'm not discounting the systems of oppression, but I feel like in terms of one's mindset, when we, and I'm sure we're going to go into the ways, you know, the different issues that we face as sort of Black Muslims, but like me as an individual, for my own sort of peace of mind and my own sanity, like the way I look at myself, because I know there will be people, sizable amount of structures and people looking at me negatively, looking down upon me, trying to exert maybe Islamophobia, anti-Blackness, racism upon me. That's even within our own community, by the way, as Muslims. But in order to push back against that, again, for my own sanity and peace of mind, I try and look at myself of what positive characteristics do these identities that I embody, what does it hold? And for me, that's empowering. And I feel like it helps me be able to navigate all of these kind of intersections and things in a healthy way, if that makes sense. So that's how I put it forward. Inshallah.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and you really like opened my eyes as well, because I know I said it like kind of in the negative way, but I wasn't really thinking about it, just because like it's a natural part of our lives, I guess.
Yeah, no, I understand. Honestly, understand.
May I just jump in, because I really like what Ayo said, and I think that is the way to be. In the sense, I remember an interviewer asked me, he said, "Oh, you know, like, okay, so you're a Muslim, you're a woman, and you wear niqab. Like, you've got 3 strikes against you, man." I was like, what? But where did you get that from? And I seriously did not understand what he was saying. And then he broke it down and he said, you know, Muslims, you know, bottom of the totem pole, you know, women, this and niqab, that. I said to him, excuse me, no one is going to put their negative ideas, their disempowering ideas and their limiting beliefs on me. I don't see myself as the bottom of the pile. I don't see myself at disadvantage. I won't accept it. Literally, my head will not accept it. And so what Aya was saying about understanding, like, you deep it, right? Like you know the system, you know what's happening, but at the end of the day, this is for everyone. You have control over what is between your ears. This mind space here, that's sacred territory. Like, you don't allow anyone to come in there and mess with your own mindset, your own sense of self, your how you see yourself. And that is, for me, one of the keys to taking back power from everybody. When I say everybody, I mean social media, I mean the media, the politicians, the psychologists, the eugenicists, everybody. If you can take back your power here, what you believe about yourself, what you see yourself as capable of, who you are, they can never, ever, ever defeat you. So I love that you said that, brother Ayo, mashallah, more power to you.
Yeah, like, forget about everyone else. I feel like I needed this talk for myself, because the points you guys are coming up with are just amazing, and they're really making me think about things. So another, like, we don't have too much longer of these Q&As, but Ayo did touch upon something. So I wanted to ask, like, what are the problems that you've had to deal with for being a Black Muslim, or what have you felt like you've had to deal with because you're a Black Muslim?
Yeah, I'll try and, there's too many examples, sadly, but I also want the others to be able to speak. But I think it's if I look at in the Muslim community, for example, and I'll go into the Black community, because I thought there's been different sides to it. But in the Muslim community, it's been sad because so actually I know some Muslims who they reverted, you know, some years back, when there were not that many masajid, there weren't that many mosques, maybe like 3 or 4 mosques in the whole of London. And they were actually discriminated against, like, for, you know, wanting to drink supermalt or having their own like cultural food. It's like, no, you can't do that, that's haram. Like, there was this whole kind of looking at them as if everything they're doing is haram just because they're inherently Black. And I feel like probably at times like I felt that myself. So I used to have like long kind of dreadlocks, or not too long, like kind of shoulder length, and I used to get people kind of making comments. I remember twice in one day actually. I went to the masjid, and I was told that my hair is like haram. Basically, I need to cut it off. And I was like, whoa! Like I remember like I didn't even, these guys just salams then straight into that. I was feeling like what like. I was like feeling very conflicted, like, so I can't even, there was no context, no nothing. There's been other things where like, I felt at times where people, they're reluctant to raise for Black Muslim causes or charities, things like that. I felt like, I've been kind of made to feel like if I'm calling out police brutality, why am I not calling out like Muslim issues, basically, kind of thing? That one always kind of gets to me. And then I remember there was a Muslim that they killed in America, and all the Muslims found out he was Muslim, and then they started making dua for the Black community, for oppression to go away. They started caring. And then there's even this thing of there's a social media personality, I'm not going to name him, but he called out a Black imam essentially for being sad at Breonna Taylor's death. And he was saying, why are we look at all these imams like, crying for. And when I saw that, my blood was boiling, to be honest with you, because I was like, why are we being criminalized and demonized as Black Muslims in our own community for feeling humanity and empathy for our Black brothers and sisters? Yes, they're not Muslim, but that doesn't mean we can't feel something for a human. Like, what is that? So there's been those kind of things where, that's why I said, like, that positive thinking in my head, like, it's very important for me to just be able to stay together, because that kind of stuff, like, I feel like earlier on, like when I first came to Islam, like, because I hadn't studied, because I hadn't really interrogated these things in the community and myself, I would have thought that, oh, maybe we are not allowed to show that kind of empathy, right? We really need to push back against that way of thinking. And there's, just before I pass on to the others, because I feel like, there's only so much the three of us can say, but there's this thing called Being Black and Muslim in Britain. They've got 2 seasons, and mashallah, they have all these questions we're sort of speaking on here, and everybody's bringing their own stories. Because I know, look, we can be speaking here, some people will still say, oh, but this is just an issue relegated to you guys. It's not. No, there's too much evidences now. And even if there wasn't, you should be listening to your Black Muslim brothers and sisters about what they're going through. So inshallah, I'll pass it on, inshallah.
My longer reminder will be about that question. But Ayo, you're too nice. That guy was called Daniel Hakikaju. You're too nice. And this I have a problem with a lot of Muslims these days. Black Muslims are too nice. Yeah. If we have to call it out for what it is and say who they are and make them be shamed for it, it's unacceptable. But anyway, sorry.
Do you know what? Fair enough, because when I actually look at those kind of things, I think it's kind of force of habit for me, but I think
you've got a very good mannerism. That's all it is. I'm a bit more. I think my personal thing is that I have consistently been calling out anti-Blackness with Muslim community for over about 8 years since I started practicing. So I'm at a point where, what it is, the friends I've made are the friends I've made. The enemies I've made are the enemies that I've made at this point.
understand, yeah. Now, just like, I think it is important, to be honest, like, we do need to be clear and open when people are saying things like that, because I do, in terms of Daniel Hakikaju, I think a lot of people perhaps admire him or take knowledge from him, but I think it is important, like, because that kind of rhetoric that I just spoke about just now is a very recurring thing, and happens towards women and other groups.
I feel like it's not about making it personal to an individual.
No, of course. Yeah.
It's a mindset. That's what, what I mean? It's a mind, it's the broader mindset of this kind of, like, somehow Islam is inherently more on the right wing of politics, for example.
Yeah.
We can have a whole discussion about that, whether it's family values or whatever, family values of things, right, abortion, and all these things are very important topics. But when that moves from topical issues to the issue of race, let's be honest, Islam's not going to be on the right of race. Let's be honest, it's not. Right wing hate other people.
Yeah. And I think for me as well, just looking at something, for me as a revert, when I was looking into Islam, that when I saw the hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him's last sermon, where he spoke explicitly on racism, that for me really touched me, because this was 1400 years before where we're at now. It was way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
This was already being spoken on. This is the wisdom of Islam, the wisdom of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So for me, as you said, like when it comes to this whole thing that Islam's going to be right wing on race and that, you know, it condones racism essentially, or this can't be something we fight against. Like, you can literally go back to scripture and you can go back to the text and the evidences to show that, look, this is not the case. And for me, that always, when I see people like that, they're coming with that kind of narrative. You know, the Prophet, peace be upon him, his wisdom is going to come before anybody now's wisdom. Like that's how it is for me. So
Okay, so unless Naima has anything to add, we're going to move on to the reminder by Ayo and his section. So Naima, do you have anything to add, or?
I think the only thing that I'd like to add is just for, you know, people who are non-Black who are listening to this, understand that even, you know, even our experiences, the four of us here, every one of us is experiencing this thing differently. We're all Black, we're all Muslim, but we've got men here, we've got women here. It makes a difference. You've got Black men, Black women, it makes a difference. Skin color makes a difference. The kind of hijab you wear makes a difference. If you wear a turban versus a niqab, your experience of these things is different. If you're a bit racially ambiguous, like I think I am, again, different experience. So people sometimes, especially, you know, people who are saying, you know, we want to learn more about Black Muslim experiences, definitely watch Black and Muslim in Britain and read, you know, widely on the topic. There's more and more material being created now because there's no one person that can say this is what Black Muslims go through. Even Ayo as a convert, revert versus, you know, Momodou as a born Muslim from Africa, you know, and you're from the Caribbean, completely different again, you know. So it's layered, you know. It's layers of experience. And I think these things are now, it's in the mainstream. Like we know what's going on, you know, and people have been creating material. It's on YouTube, mashallah. So, you know, if you know, take time to just listen to what's out there and absorb everybody's different experiences, inshallah.
Inshallah. So by the way, to the other speakers, after I speak, like feel free to give your own reminders and to think, just being one of the vice presidents of FOSIS, just representing Islamic societies, I just wanted to give some practical advice to the Isocs and to people in committees and different things, because I think that's really important. And just drawing inspiration from the fact that, you know, look, when we look at our tradition, our faith, there were actually Black prophets. I'm not sure if it was mentioned before I came, but Adam alayhi salam, you know, to be Adam means to be very dark, you know. Musa alayhi salam was described as being from the darkest. In terms of his skin color, was similar to the darkest of the Arabs, right? The Arab tribes, right? The Prophet, peace be upon him, is descended from a Black woman, Hajar alayhi salam, right? There are so many examples. Ali radiallahu an is described as being extremely dark. Sameya, wife of Yasser, mother of Ammar, right? She's also described as being dark. We have so many people other than Bilal, right, in our tradition and our faith, who have embodied Blackness, and they have been dark, they have been Black, and it's not wrong. People need to understand that we're not on the periphery, we're not on the side. It's compatible. It's very, very compatible. There's no conflict there. And some people may say, so why do we need to mention these figures in order to humanize ourselves or to reinforce the point? It's to show that righteousness and being Black, yes, they can be synonymous. They can be together. It's not a conflict. There isn't a conflict there, and people need to understand that. And coming now to in terms of Isocs, alhamdulillah, the speakers here, I think, have given, even for me, alhamdulillah, it's been nice just to hear what you've both been saying, being able to take that what you've said in. And I feel like we have also spoken positively as well, which are also in terms of how we can move forward, right? How we should think. But what's very, very important here is that, you know, some of the other speakers here have been speaking on this issue for years, right? We want to bring the verses and hadith in our faith to life, right? Some people will say, oh, Bilal radiallahu anhu was Black, or what about the Prophet, peace upon him's last sermon? And they'll use that to deflect the issue. No, we should actually be aiming to bring these things back to life. I saw this somewhere. It said Islam didn't end racism. It commanded us as Muslims to end racism, right? some people say, why are people asking us as Muslims to fight back against racism? Because Islam is the truth. Islam is a force for justice, right? It gives people what they're owed and their rights, right? And similarly, in terms of racism, we're looking at racism, Islam is the solution. Like Malcolm X said this, and I really believe this. It changed his whole mindset when he went to Mecca, when he went on the Hajj pilgrimage, that Islam is the solution to racism. And we in our Isocs, we need to start embodying that. So when Black Muslims have issues, it needs to be taken seriously, right? Each and every one of us here is a leader in their community, your family, your friends, your ISOC committee, your masajid. Somewhere you're gonna be a leader, right? And when we look at Surah An-Nisa verse 135, be witnesses for justice, right? Whether it be against your relatives, your parents, or yourselves, you have to question yourselves. Because at the moment, unfortunately, I feel like there's a lot of, posting of black squares, posting on social media, but are we actually challenging like the people behind closed doors? And are we doing it in a way, that it's, when you're doing it in the open, you'll get a pat on the back, people are going to see, but when you get that, when you're with your parents or your relatives, or even with yourself, and you have to ask yourself those deep questions, we need to see that start happening. Because I'll be honest with you, I've for the last couple of years, 3 years, I'm speaking to Black Muslims. A lot of them are becoming very disenfranchised, and they're wanting to go off to do their own stuff. And a part of me really can't blame them, to be honest with you, because they are tired. They'll come to a social, they'll come to something, and people are not welcoming them. Or it's very cultural. There isn't that aspect of bringing them in, or people will be just outright racist to them or anti-Black to them. And it's, I know, again, I'm really trying to be honest with you guys. I know some Black Muslims who they're not even Muslim anymore, to be honest with you. And I asked them why. One brother, he went to an Islamic boarding school, and it was all Asians, and they bullied the heck out of him for his skin color, right? And for where he comes from. And you may say, well, that isn't a reason to leave, but you need to understand that these for him were the gatekeepers of the religion to him. These are people that were teaching him the religion, right? And again, I'm not justifying it at all, but I'm just trying to give you perspective that for all of you guys, the way you interact with others, people are very receptive to that. And your Black Muslim brothers and sisters are receptive to that. And I don't want to see, even during the George Floyd issue, that was a very painful time for Black Muslims to be seeing how some members of the community were speaking very brashly on the issue. People who, you shouldn't have to feel entitled or like, I have to put my view forward. I must put my view forward on the XYZ. When you don't have knowledge of the issue, especially when it isn't your lived experience, often you're going to come through with very strange opinions, right? So when you're speaking to people, when you're observing things, really think, do I want to be someone who adds to the file? Do I want to put it out? And sometimes that means just listening and taking things in and creating solutions. And alhamdulillah, like literally was said, this event I think is very, very beneficial. So that's just really speaking towards the ISOC context. Even little things like food, everyday biryani is not everyday biryani, guys. I like biryani a lot personally, but sometimes some jollof or some Somali food, you mix it up and people are going to say this is a subtle thing. No, food brings people together. When you go to weddings, when you go to events, socials, people are coming together. So it has to be a Nigerian jollof, sorry, no Senegalese jollof or Ghanaian jollof, by the way. Sorry, I don't want to bring my disputes here, but yeah, sorry, a little bit of Jake's banter there. But yeah, inshallah, so please make the art that our community becomes united. Make the art that that you become more sincere. All of us become more sincere in what we're trying to achieve, and make the art for oppressed Black communities. That's another thing. When I'm in the mosques, when I'm in, when we're in places where we're making the art, like it's always for other countries. When we're fundraising, right? Really push the ISOCs, your mosques, your imams to fundraise to make the art for Black Muslim countries and causes. So that's it for me. But please, the other speakers, if you want to come in and add, because I know you have a lot to add, I just wanted to bring some things in for specifically for the ISOC context, but I know I went out a little bit. So inshallah, if anybody else wants to make comments, Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah for that, Ayo. So do any of the speakers have anything to add to what Ayo said?
Other than the fact it must be Senegalese and Gambian jollof as to where it came from, I think that was an amazing talk. So thank you, bro.
Oh, that was amazing too. I'm coming here for the Ghanaian jollof. I don't know what you lot are talking about.
That's not in the running of conversation. It's between Senegal and Nigeria.
I brought it in the conversation.
Oh yeah, pack your bag.
Anyway, West African jollof, yes. And then we'll bring the barisi or hilib from the other side of the continent.
Inshallah.
But you know, subhanAllah, one of the things that I think Ayo has really touched on, which I would love everybody to pay close attention to, there are two ways to deal with the issue of race and racism. One is from a social justice perspective, which I think millennials gravitate towards. You know, the social media generation obviously has been cultivated on social justice values, right? And of course, you know, that we know all the arguments against racism and anti-Blackness, etc. But there's another angle which Ayo touched on, which I think is something that we're missing the point. And the point is that Islam is a deen that stands for justice. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the responsibility of being the best nation and establishing the justice and speaking the truth, even if it is against ourselves. So actually, when in the summertime, I was invited on lots of podcasts and TV shows, etc., to talk about anti-Blackness and racism, because everybody jumped on it. You know, everybody wanted to talk about it. Oh, what are Muslims doing? What should Muslims be doing? And, you know, somebody just said, just be a Muslim. It's really not that hard. What is a Muslim? A Muslim submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A Muslim is humble. A Muslim understands that whatever privilege they have is from Allah, and that nobody is perfect and everybody has good and has bad, and Allah has blessed everybody and has put beauty in everything and put beauty in everyone. So a lot of the stuff, the anti-Blackness attitudes, the racist attitudes, they come from chauvinism. They come from cultural chauvinism. They come from kibr. They come from pride and arrogance. That is the haqq truth that we need to deep here, that it's pride and arrogance that allows you to think that you are better than anyone else based on skin color. And who is the author of this? Who is the author of that pride? That is a shaitanic attitude, and it is a deficit that you have. If you have that in your heart is diseased. We say the same thing, and for me, the same thing applies when you have men who believe that fundamentally they are better than women. They will always be better than women. Women always will be beneath them, and that they can be treated in any which way they like. At the end of the day, our deen has given us such clear guidelines, and as human beings has reminded us of the fitrah that we were created upon. So there is a social justice angle, which mashallah, a lot of people, you know, will gravitate towards, but there's some people who are like, nah, you know, we're Muslim, we don't have that problem. I'm sure you guys have had this, you know, this kind of rebuttal. Islam is not for racism. Islam doesn't see race. There's no racism in Islam. That's the kind of rebuttal you get when you start talking about these issues, right? Oh, Bilal was black. Yeah. All of that. There's two angles here. There is the very clear social justice angle, but the other angle is really, what is the root of racism? What is the root of chauvinism? What is the root of nationalism? What is the root of all these isms and schisms that are dividing us today? It is pride. You think you are better than another person because of how Allah created you. How nonsense is that? So I think, you know, lean in on that, Ayo. I love the fact that you mentioned this in an Islamic context, because Islamic societies should be the ones that are the most careful about this, because we have the blueprint, guys. We have the blueprint for a racially, quote unquote, inclusive society, because we had Medina. We had the Sahaba. We had a pluralistic, diverse ummah from the beginning. Okay, it wasn't just Arabs and then, you know, as you say, black people got co-opted later on, white people got no, it's not like that. Those early Muslims were different shades, different nations, different social classes. We have the blueprint. So if we want to have a prophetic model and we want to actually embody the prophetic way, all we need to do is we just need to look at Medina. We need to look at the Medinan society. We need to look at what was established by the Prophet ﷺ and ask ourselves, how far are we from that? That's just all I wanted to add on that.
Jazakallah for that, Naima. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to Momodou's section. If you're ready for that.
Yeah. Bismillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm kind of wanted to take it from the angle of telling the story, or kind of detailing the journey of what many young Black people feel, and then and in inclusion with that, the journey of a young Black Muslim, as it were. And that kind of journey starts at when they're young, or when they're a child, really, when they're like between the age of like 4, 5, 6. And it's about starting with, at which point does a Black person realize that they're Black? Because when they're young, in their 5, 6, they don't really know. It's not uncommon to find a multicultural friendship group of children. It's not uncommon. Like, they don't see difference in that way. And I know the modern liberal argument, people like to say, oh, well, I've transcended race. No, you haven't. Or you said, oh, I don't even see color. No, you do. You might pretend that you don't, but you certainly do. And the society in which you're in certainly does see color. But I feel like the only kind of people who that naturally applies to is children. They genuinely do not see color. So the question is then, in detailing this young person's journey, as they grow up through life, something will always happen. I share this in common with many other Black people, and this story is not exclusive to one person. It's the question of, when did they become, or first realize that they are Black? And something usually always happens in their life that causes them to think that, maybe the way I'm getting treated now is because of my skin color. After that happens, it kind of opens up the floodgates to self-introspection, of a journey of self-discovery. That normally starts for many Black people by watching Roots. If you're from an African heritage, especially West African, you watch Roots, which Roots is a movie which is created by Alex Haley, Alex Haley is the person who helped Malcolm X create his autobiography. And that story starts off, it's a story of Kunta Kinte. He was a Mandingo, which they say in English, which we say Mandinka, a Mandinka slave who was taken to the Americas, and it's very, very well documented. So that kind of starts off, okay, cool, you learn a bit about slavery as a young Black person. As you continue to go through the world, you find more actions come out, or you find that you are discriminated more. The difference is, just 10 years ago when you were younger, you and your white best friend, you didn't see anything difference between you. But then as you got about 15, 14 in school, you find that, okay, the way I see the world is clearly different to the way he sees the world now, unfortunately. That normally leads to someone becoming, reading about the usual Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. And I find that around this particular stage of a young Black person, it turn to rage. And obviously in school, we're taught the false dichotomy of what is Malcolm X. Martin Luther King was this peaceful, loving guy who only, turned the other cheek person, which again is falsely constructed. But Malcolm X was this radical, almost in the British school system, maybe not so much in America, but definitely in the UK, definitely my own experience was that we were taught that Malcolm X is this extremist, this radical, this terrorist-like figure. So I was a bit like, oh no, it's all about Malcolm X and Gandhi and all these people. And so even though Gandhi was a racist, but that's for another day. So person will come like 15, 16, around this age. The ages are just arbitrary, by the way. I'm just giving my own personal example in that. Someone will start to read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And what do they see? They fall in love with this person. They start watching his videos. They start listening to his lectures, and they fall in love with this person. And and then they see, okay, what other figures stood up for issues of race? Then they see Muhammad Ali, for example, and they see, okay, a lot of these strong individuals who, had the largest systems of the world shaking and trembling, all come and cite Islam as what gives them that spiritual strength. As their Islam is the thing that compels them to stand for justice. So then after that, this person's young individual will start looking into Islam more often than not. I mean, this is why I always say that the khair, the goodness that Malcolm X, may Allah be blessed, happy with him and pleased with him, he must be receiving in his grave must be tenfold, because I've heard hundreds of people, and I'm sure it's into his thousands, if not tens of thousands, of people who have come to Islam through reading his autobiography. So this person, this young individual, reads the autobiography of Malcolm X and decides to become Muslim. And he says to himself, you know what? you know what, this must be the answer now. Clearly, if Malcolm X very rightly said in 1964 after his Hajj, after his pilgrimage, he says that, you know, if Islam has the ability to solve the race issue. He went from someone who believed in that white people were devils to someone believing that all humans are equal. And he thought, and this is someone who in that short space of time, someone could be transformed to witness the humanity in everyone else, but still stand for racial justice. Then what is this Islam thing about? So this person becomes Muslim. Then this person goes to the mosque and then experiences all types of racism, unfortunately. You know, he experiences racism about his appearance. His natural hair is demonized. This is for men and women. I know hair is such a big thing for Black women. Many times as well, you see like, oh my God, a fade is haram all of a sudden. Having waves in your hair is all of a sudden haram. Letting a Muslim man's hair grow long naturally is all of a sudden unpresentable. It's somehow contradictory to Islam. But this person has this inner struggle and says, you know what? This is just because these Muslims are in the West and they have been affected by Western propaganda. I'm gonna go and learn the faith for myself. No, I'm gonna go and live in a Muslim majority country. So this person goes to a Muslim majority country and then things are not as good there. They struggle to learn the Arabic language. And after they've become a bit better in the Arabic language, they hear things like abid. Abid is what means a slave in Arabic language. And that's what they use as a derogatory term to address Black people. Then he has another internal struggle or another conflict. What's happening here? Hang on a minute. Okay, those guys in the West, maybe they've been affected by what colonialism or post-colonial hang-up. But why is it in these countries, we're Muslim majority countries, I'm facing the same racism? But you know what, I'm gonna persevere. If Malcolm X and all these people were Muslim and they're stuck at it, it must be just people and not in the text. Then he goes to the textbooks. And unfortunately, he is shocked at what is in the textbooks. So unfortunately, in the Islamic tradition. Again, not from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and not from Allah either, but from certain scholars who unfortunately embraced anti-Blackness. And then they quite wrongly inserted that into the fiqh textbooks. So you find in the fiqh textbooks, you find that people embrace the curse of Ham. The curse of Ham is that one of Noah's sons saw Noah naked. This is a Christian story. That one saw Noah naked, the Prophet Noah naked, and then was cursed and was made into a Black people, and that's where all Black people come from. And this is what many Christians use to justify slavery, that Black people are the curse of Ham. And that explains their dark skin. And that's what some Muslim scholars embraced. Or you would find that some Muslim scholars wrote, unfortunately again, that Black women are ugly and undesirable in society, that when they get married, they don't even require wali. Or you will find sometimes that you can look at Black women in their faces, or Black women may not need to be as covered as everyone else's because they're not as beautiful. And this unfortunately leaves many young Black people, many Black people at a crossroad now. What do I do? Do I still stick with this faith that clearly has brought me so much solace, or should be thing that provides me solace? Clearly it brought solace to the likes of Malcolm X, and it allowed them to carry on, and Muhammad Ali and many other great figures who fought for justice in the modern era. And this is, and then now that's, and a modern manifestation of that now, the story of a young Black person is that on social media, what will happen, as Ayo said quite rightly before, you will get things like, when Rihanna came out recently and said, by accident, she says it was an accident, that she used some hadith of the Prophet in her lingerie show. What was some of the things that were said on Twitter? If you want your Black lives to matter, don't disrespect our Prophet. This is from Muslims saying this. oh, why don't you go as hard for Black Lives Matter as you did for, why don't you go as hard for Yemen as you went for Black Lives Matter? Constantly, Muslims are pitting their struggles and their things against Black people, forgetting and negating that Black Muslims exist. And definitely, I would say being a Black Muslim at many a times is very tiring. And I always say to people that, I always say to Muslims when I encounter this and when I choose to engage it, I say, you ought to be very careful in how you describe Black people and their struggles, because it is exactly because of Black people that you enjoy many of the freedoms that you do. And if you look into the Black intellectual tradition, especially in American context, they always spoke about everyone else's voice, because when you have been oppressed for so long, you notice that you recognize it elsewhere. You will seldom find a Black freedom fighter who does not address Islamophobia. You will seldom find Black freedom fighters from the Black radical tradition in the past that didn't address Zionism, for example. That didn't speak about Muslims being oppressed in the Muslim world, for example. And this is why I say, people are saying, oh, this is about allyship and this is about becoming an ally and all this stuff. And I say, you know what? I get it. It's nice. But I feel like an ally makes you out to be this special, extraordinary status that is given for allyship, when really it's just about being a decent human being. Seeing the humanity in other people is just about being a decent human being. There should not be no allyship in that. Sorry, I know I've gone on, so inshallah, I'll just leave it there. Thanks for listening.
Jazakallah for that, Momodou. I really enjoyed listening to that, and according to the comments as well, everyone else did as well. So yeah, okay, I don't think anyone has anything to add, so we'll go on to your part now. So I think if you start talking, then I can spotlight you.
Sure, okay, bismillah. Assalamu alaikum. I've been asked to speak about the identity and the role of self-care, and just the idea of empowerment and visibility, etc. So I would like to start with acknowledging that this journey starts with us. Can I just see in the chat how many people are sort of identify as a Black Muslim in this room? So I just know who I'm speaking to. Is it mainly people who identify as Black Muslims? Is it mainly non-Black Muslims? Just give me a heads up, so I know to make sure that I speak to the to the right thing. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to say what I'm saying for the benefit of any Black Muslim who listens to this, is listening now or listens to this in the future. What I'm saying can be applied to many other peoples, many other groups who may be considered disadvantaged in different spheres, okay? And this can go across gender, it can go across race, it can go across social class, it can go across nationality. Everybody has their own space in which they have privilege and in spaces in which they are disadvantaged, okay? So I want you to know that what I'm going to say applies to everybody in different degrees. But I feel with Black Muslims, over October, alhamdulillah, I was blessed to be able to run and host the first online Black Muslim festival in the UK. And alhamdulillah, it was a global event where we had speakers from literally all over the world, diaspora and Africa, coming together on one platform to talk about all of the things, okay? Basically, so many different aspects of the Black Muslim experience, from history and identity to relationships, to money, to wealth, to community, to youth. So many different issues were tackled. And there's two things that kept coming up again and again. It didn't matter really what weekend we were on, because each weekend had its own theme. But I kept hearing two things coming up again and again. And one was identity. The importance of identity, of knowing who you are, the importance of claiming and owning that identity, and what it costs us to have a shattered or broken sense of identity. So that was one topic that came up. The other topic that came up was, unfortunately, trauma. And unfortunately, related to what we were saying earlier, the Black identity in the diaspora is almost inextricably linked with trauma. And I would say that once an African leaves the continent and is able to look at the continental history from that vantage point as a Black person, you also realize how traumatized our history actually is. And so one of the things that I think, Momodou, alluded to was this way that people have, Muslims have, of comparing Muslim issues with Black issues and almost pitting them against each other. As in, and again, it goes back to this thing that Brother Aya was talking about, saying people want to know whether you are Black or Muslim. And they don't mean like, are you one or the two? Are you one or the other? They don't really mean identity-wise. They mean your allegiance, your loyalty. Where does it lie? Are you more loyal to your Black side or your Muslim side? If it goes down, whose side are you on? Are you with the Blacks or are you with the Muslims? And that, I think, really is when they kind of push those buttons of, oh, why don't you make noise for so-and-so? Oh, why do you care so much about Breonna Taylor? She's not even Muslim. It's because they have this sense that your allegiance is to Blacks and to Black people and the Black cause, and not to Muslims, because of course the two are not the same and are not synonymous, and at some points may even be divergent. So this identity, this issue of identity, for me, what I learned through the whole of this particular October, and what I have seen, and I want to just pay homage here to people like the Gambian, people like Hafsa Dabiri, people like Muhammad and the people behind Black and Muslim in Britain, and so many others, especially my millennials who have reclaimed the Blackness in their Muslim identity. As somebody who came into Islam in the 90s, it's not lost on me that my generation, we felt we had to choose. We felt we had to choose between being Black and Muslim, and that we almost felt like now that we're Muslim, Black issues, Black identity, Black culture, it's not for us anymore. And it's only now, literally in the past year or two, that my generation, the parents, especially converts and reverts, are starting to understand and reclaim their Blackness, which of course sounds crazy, because here you are in the Ummah, even though you can't claim your Blackness, you are still seen as a Black person. And that's the thing that a lot of Muslims don't really understand, is that while there seems to be this expectation that once you become Muslim, your race has no bearing, your race doesn't matter, unfortunately, the lived experience of us within the Muslim community is that your race does matter a lot. And I asked a friend of mine, and this is an anecdotal, and if anybody kind of has a different viewpoint, feel free to just say, no, sis, I'll call you out. I think that's nonsense. I asked Sister Layla Abdullah Paulos, who was very active during the Black Muslim Festival, and she's a proud Black woman, brown-skinned, academic. She's head of NBA Muslims, very outspoken. And I said to her, sis, if I was brown-skinned, if I was a dark Black Muslim woman, and I didn't wear niqab, for example, do you think that we would have the support, that I would have the support of the community and the support of the media and the organizations, the Muslim organizations? And she said to me, hell no. And I was like, wow. She said, you get a pass because you're racially ambiguous. People maybe didn't even know until recently that you were Black. You're Naima B. Robert, you almost transcend race. Like, we knew who you were, but for a lot of people, it wasn't a part of your identity. She said, if you presented as a Black woman, you would not have had the support that you had, because people would feel, wouldn't have that sense of kind of, oh, okay, she's almost like one of us or whatever. And again, I would love to, it was just one person's viewpoint, but she's somebody who's very astute. She's used to the race dynamics within the Muslim community. And I'm saying this as somebody who, I recognize the privilege, okay? And I recognize that, not everyone can get away with certain things. And as we know, we talked about, people's lived experiences. So this issue of identity, And the fact that while we were expected to kind of leave Blackness at the door of the masjid, okay, and then just be Muslim, unfortunately, the way that we're treated by Muslims and the way that Black people are routinely treated by Muslims reminds them again and again, you're Black, you're not like us, you know, you're not one of us, you are something else and you're something lower. So the first point that I want to make is that reclaiming that identity starts with us. It is up to us to reclaim our history and reclaim our heritage and reclaim our place within the Islamic framework, okay? And within world history, this is a thing, this is a work of Africans in general, diaspora and continent, that Africans have to heal whatever we have, you know, taken on from society, from the media, from what we were taught in school. That's our work first. And mashallah, Abdullah Hakim Quick has done amazing work in this area, which was eye-opening for us as Black people to know that our history with Islam goes that far back, just like the brother was mentioning earlier, as well as for all Muslims to know that this is our diverse heritage. This is our history as Muslims. It's not a Black Muslim history thing, it is a Muslim history thing. So the owning and the reclaiming and the embodying of that confidence has to start with us. And then the second thing is healing the wounds, acknowledging what the rubbish that we have inherited through the school system, through the media, you know, acknowledging the trauma, acknowledging the pain, just like Brother Aya was saying, and working to heal that so that we can walk firmly in who we are and be able to bring our light to any space that we choose to inhabit. And then the third thing is for the Muslim community to get back to its basics, get back to the haqq, get back to what we are really on this earth to do. Because for a lot of us, for many of us, and you guys are in university, you know, the conversation about different communities feeling almost inoculated against the system, okay, systems of racism, systems of white supremacy, of privilege, of oppression. Many of us feel like we've transcended that, maybe because we have that proximity to whiteness, we have the ability to change our accent, that, you know, we can pass almost in the wider society, we can become part of the system. And really, I just want to end on this because this is something that came up in a lot of conversations during the festival, which was sometimes for us as Black people, because we don't have that proximity, because we are very often stopped from integrating, we don't have the option to pass, it allows us to see the system from the outside. And for some of us, we can see that the system is broken. The system needs healing. The system is poisoned. And what good would it be for me to assimilate into or integrate into a broken system, to integrate into a poisoned system and become part of the machinery? Guys, the choices that we have before us today will shape the future of our world, of the societies that we live in, the societies that we choose to create. And you guys now at this stage, I implore all of you, return to your deen haqqan. Return to your deen haqqan, as in allow the deen to cleanse you. We have so much around us that is impinging on our fitrah. And I implore all of us to take the time to allow the deen to cleanse us, whether it's pride, arrogance, materialism, racism, envy of others, all the stuff that we see in the movies, that we see on TV, Hulu, Netflix, on social media. Allow Islam to cleanse you so that you can have the right perspective on your life and what you want and where you want to go and the kind of world that you want to create moving forward, inshallah. Because the future is in your hands. But if you don't take the mantle and say, I have the power, I own this space here, no one else gets to inhabit this space unless I let them. If you don't do that, you may find yourself sleepwalking into a situation which you can't back out of. So this is for everyone. This is not a message to Black Muslims. This is not a message to non-Black Muslims. This is a message to everyone. But I've got my wonderful Muslims here who are, you know, getting prepared to take up, inshallah, leadership positions in the future. Please, guys, remember who you are. Get back to fitra, understand and accept and embody who you are and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to show up in the world and be the change that you want to see, inshallah. And all the good is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and any mistakes or any evil that I have said is from myself and the shaitan. Jazakallah khairan.
Jazakallah for that, Naima. So we have like a few minutes before the actual Q&A. So does anyone have anything to add to Naima's part?
No, not at all. Barakallah Fiki. It was really enlightening to listen to that. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, so I will ask, sorry, go on, Momodou.
No, I had nothing to say. I just think thank you so much for that.
Oh wait, sorry, my camera's not on. So I will ask you guys a few more of the questions that we had written, and then when it gets to 2:15, we'll move on to the questions that the people asked. And Sarah's put the link in the chat a few times, so if anyone has any questions, make sure you do go over to the link. It's slide.do/isoc and ask your questions there, and we'll be asking them soon, inshallah. So another question that I have for the speakers, again, any of you guys can like answer, but have you been a victim of racism, like yourselves? And if you don't mind,
who can I'm just gonna jump in. Yeah, of course. I mean, I feel like probably one of the things that inspires me, that kind of that has put me on this particular path, is my experience with racism. Is my direct experience of racism. Starting from when I mentioned that story, a lot of that was my own personal story, in the sense that when I've always known I was Black, but obviously when there's kind of key defining moments in my life that led me to be so passionate about this topic. So first one was when I was about 15, being inspired of the election of Barack Obama at the time. I was like, oh my God, the first Black president, oh, you know, no matter what of his policies, which I think are dreadful, but he was someone as for tokenism, as far as tokenism goes, he is kind of symbolic, yeah, especially in that country. So I remember like Googled, you know, youth politics in the UK. So what came up with a link was the United Kingdom's Youth Parliament. So I stood for election. I grew up originally in London, and then I moved to Birmingham. But when I was about 13, my best friend was murdered. So I felt passionate about knife crime and youth crime and these kind of things. So I stood up on a platform for knife crime, and that was my main kind of campaigning thing. So as it goes, you stand for like election. How youth parliament works is that it mirrors the actual parliament. So for example, Birmingham has 5 MPs, therefore it has 5 MYPs, and each MYP is delegated a particular constituency. So I stood for election in school. Many people might have heard this. I've said this story several times. But I stood, as I was going around getting votes from different classes, I was 15 years old. I went to a particular class and I said that, okay, yeah, guys, I'm running for this election, gave my 2-minute speech, and how it was, each kind of school backed the person from that school. And then one of the white kids says to me, I'm looking for the white face to vote for on the page. So I said, bearing in mind, yeah, I've just come out of like trying to be so diplomatic, yeah. I'm trying to be so diplomatic, being nice, and I'll be honest with you, I'm a bit fiery, yeah. So I was a bit like, well, you know, I'm British as well. And the guy said to me, if a dog is born in a stable, it doesn't make it a horse. So I was like, whoa. As you can imagine, it turned quite left, and then the next day or the same day after school, about 20 or 30 white guys with baseball bats and chains and dogs came to my school looking for me, and that became a whole drama for a week. That was just one incident. And I have several of them. More recently, just 2 months ago, I was in Birmingham. I was outside. I was talking to one of my friends who's Asian, and a white guy came up to me, completely unprovoked. I didn't even know who he was. Says to me, racism is all BS anyway. And I was just like, oh, here we go again. So I was like, again, trying to be intellectual. I was trying an attempt anyway. I was like, okay, well, racism is not all BS, but what's your point? He goes, oh, BLM is making things worse and so on and so forth. And then I said, okay, I don't really think that's the case, but cool, you're entitled to your own opinion. He just wouldn't let it go. He says to me, so if I call you a nigger, and I said to him, listen, I said, excuse me? I said, don't say that. He goes, no, listen to me. If I call you a N-word again, so I squared up to him, and then he had a cigarette in his hand. He goes to me, you're gonna get burnt, boy. And I was like, are you okay? So I slapped his hand. Then he said, I'm not trying not to incriminate myself too much. But then he goes to me, come here, my little Nigerian boy. And it turned into a whole drama. And this just 2 months ago in Birmingham. And I said that this is completely unprovoked. So your question, a resounding yes. And again, and I've always said to myself, just to kind of wrap up, I've always said to myself, I pray Allah never puts me in that situation where, you see sometimes racists abusing people on the bus or racists abusing people on the train. I'm not someone's going to sit down and say, and just be quiet. But yeah. Someone else want to jump in?
Yeah, no. I mean, those experiences, I feel like it's just that. Yeah, I can't even. I'm speechless. But I think in terms of myself, I think what you said, Momodou, before, in terms of like, there's a point where you realize you're black. Yeah. So I actually grew up, majority of Nigerians, for like the first 6-7 years of my life. I didn't have too much interaction with white people. Then I went to a school which was majority white, still in South London, and then I remember I used to like, so they have like Mufti Day, which is like the day where you come in your own clothes and stuff. So Nigerian clothes are just the clothes I wore. I ate Nigerian food. I'd wear, the clothes, everything. So I came on Mufti Day with the clothes, and people would make fun of me, like really, really make fun of me. And I really began to feel ashamed of my like native culture. Like, I'm born in London, but I've always felt an affiliation for Nigeria, and I visit very often. And subhanAllah, I actually saw one of the guys who used to bully me at school. I saw him coming from a place basically where it was an African themed kind of night at the place, and I think he was also wearing like the shiki or something. And he didn't recognize me, but I recognized him from the back. Where I saw it was like in the line for McDonald's. I was like, this guy, like, I know him as he was walking. Like, and I'm like, wow, you're the same guy that used to rip into me for repping my own culture, like authentically, and now you're doing the same thing because it's fashionable. And I was just like, obviously, like maybe he's not gonna even know in his head the whole progression as in terms of how he got to where he is. Maybe he really remember what he did to me, but like that left such a mark in me in terms of like who I was. And to be honest with you, like I'll be honest, I went through probably like a 10-year period from like that time, probably up until I was in sixth form, where I had this like self-hatred for like my own culture. I didn't even know why. Like it was only until I really got to sixth form and then to uni where I was like, whoa. It's because when I was at school as well, like I used to have the M word said to me. I'd be compared to animals. I'd be made fun of in different ways. And I was always a person where I'm not going to take it. I used to fight. Like break time fighting, lunchtime fighting. And it got to a point where I was actually, a lot of people may not know this actually, but I was excluded from 2 schools basically because I was like, no, I'm not going to take this. Like, I'm not just going to keep sitting down and having this. But I feel like it got to a point where the negative reinforcement was so much that I actually started to like very much dislike parts of myself and my culture. And it was only until I really started to read more, I started to become, I guess, like growing intelligence, where I was like, no, where is this coming from? Really interrogating this. And there's other things like stop and search is something. So like I remember I was going through an area. I'm a medical student. I was with 3 other black medical students. Even if they weren't medical students, doesn't mean we should be stopped and search. We're walking through an area. Then the police like, yeah, we're stopping and searching everyone in the area. I'm like, okay. Like again, I didn't know what to say back then. This was like 5 years ago or something. And then I saw like a group of white guys that walking past and they were laughing and everything and they just didn't get stopped. And it was just another reminder like, yeah, do you know what? It's because it's you guys. Do you know what I mean? And even, do you know what as well? Like sometimes the anti-blackness and the racism doesn't come just from white people. It's come from South Asians, right? And I'm sad because I've got 2 younger siblings, brothers, and one of them, the youngest one, he's 7. He came home and he was like, oh, my friend, he came home and he said, my skin's poo colored. And I was like, you know, inside, like I didn't show too much on my face, but inside I was just like, oh, I was like, this is still going on and on and on. And I was like, oh, was it a white boy? He's like, no, it's my Asian classmate. His name's, what was his name? But he's like, and I'm like, whoa, like, and obviously I knew Asians, like, you know, and other people can contribute to anti-blackness, but it really just reinforced me, because I was like, I immediately was like, oh yeah, is it one of the white boys in class? Because that's how most of the time it was for me. It was like, no, it wasn't. And I really had to sit with him and tell him, no, your skin's beautiful. Like, you've got a beautiful shade of skin color. It's really handsome, really lovely. Just try and reinforce some positive images to him, because he kept saying it actually, like for a few weeks, like, oh, my skin's poo colored. He told me the situation happened once, but he's gonna keep coming back and being like, oh, is my skin poo colored? Like he said my skin's poo colored. He's 7. He's already got an understanding of what racism is. You see what I'm saying? And that's what I really want to stop like happening. Even with myself, when I said I wanted to do medicine at school, I had this white chemistry teacher, and he's like, are you sure? Are you sure you wanna? Are you sure? I was like, yeah, I'm sure. Like, and I'll be in the room with there's another white guy, a kid who wanted to do medicine as well, in the same room. The teacher's gonna be like, oh, you're applying to this place. Oh, that's good. I can't apply there because, you know, X, Y, Z. And I'm just there like, what? Like, I'm literally here and you're saying these things. Alhamdulillah, when I got in, I actually went back to school. It's when I saw the guy, and he obviously knew I got in. I got into UCL. He looked at me for a millisecond, and then he just turned his eyes like straight. He couldn't even look at me because it was burning him so much. And subhanAllah, I just think, like, what kind of issues within your heart do you have that it really pains you to see somebody who's black doing well? So for me, like, that's something I really want, inshallah, you know, inshallah ta'ala, this is possible, but I want to see a world where at least, you know, my brothers, inshallah, the children I have, they can go to school, they can go anywhere, and they're not going to have to be having those kind of like comments made to them. So again, another resounding yes, I would say, but I just wanted to give you more examples, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah for that. So we're going to move on, unless Naima has something to add, we're going to move on to the questions from the people now, from the guests.
I would just like to say that, subhanAllah, the psychological trauma of these types of experiences in, you know, nurseries, schools, shops, you know, just in society, you know, the cost of that should never be underestimated. And, you know, the one thing I would say to everybody who is listening to this and, you know, maybe can't relate, yeah, you probably have seen this taking place, or you have heard within your family group or at a gathering disparaging comments about Black people, yeah, whether they're being cussed in your language or people are commenting on the news or whatever. And I just want to say to everybody who has been in that position or ever finds themselves in that position, remember the psychological trauma that these types of attitudes cause to your fellow man, okay? And be the one to call them out. Be the one to call it out and make it something that is unacceptable, because it is unacceptable. You know, even I'm sure everybody who heard that story of, subhanAllah, you know, I feel it. I'm thinking of my children. I'm thinking of the violence of a child. Where did a child get that idea from? To be able to tell another child, your skin is poo colored. And that story is, I mean, there are multitude of stories like that, whether it's our hair, our features, our skin, where we come from, all of that stuff. There is just so much out there. So I would just say the way that we change this, the way that we stamp this out is by making it clear it's not acceptable. Not only will we not do it ourselves, but we will not tolerate for it to happen around us. We will call it out. And guess what, guys? Even in the older generation, I know a lot of people say, oh, but that's what they know. That's how they grew up and everything. I'm telling you, even to start, addressing some of these issues with your family members, because some of the people who are out there with these old ideas, they are still running the masajid. They are still running the mosques. they still have power over the madrasa system, which is another place where violence takes place against Black children. And you would be very surprised, and I know because I had these panels with Black Muslim parents who are traumatized by the anti-Blackness in the Asian community, as seen in Islamic schools and in madaris. Okay, so if you imagine that you're sending your child to an Islamic school on purpose, this is in the States, in the UK, in South Africa, many places where Black people are a minority within the faith community. And what you'll find is that Black children are routinely discriminated against, are routinely punished more than other children, are made to feel like they don't belong, are made to feel like they are less than, their worth is not accepted, their culture is not celebrated, all of this stuff. This generation can change that, but only if we start taking a stand. That's all.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said, and like hearing the experiences of everyone too is like very sad. Like me personally, I haven't really experienced racism in the same way you guys have, but I guess because I'm from Manchester, it's quite like an inclusive place. My high school was like majority Black people, so that's not really something I had to worry about there either. I guess not in terms of Blackness, but in terms of being Muslim, like the place where not affected me, but where it's had the most impact is in uni. So I'm a medic as well. And majority of medics are like white and non-Muslim. So when they do have events and stuff, majority of them are like drinking events or like at the clubs and stuff. And obviously me, I'm not gonna like do that. So then it's kind of like, okay, so they're all together, like there's so many of them that go to these events as well. They're all together having fun there, and then there's not really many other events for like the Muslims or like the non-drinkers even that are non-Muslim. So I guess that's where it's impacted me most. But yeah, alhamdulillah, I haven't really
sorry to cut you off, sorry.
No. I was just gonna say like alhamdulillah, I haven't really experienced racism in the same way that you guys have.
I just want to say that I think, however, though, I mean, only because you asked is why I answered about my racist experiences.
Yeah.
I don't ever believe in someone like, I don't come from a position of weakness.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I'm so downtrodden. Oh my God. No, I feel like this is okay. Despite everything that happens, we're still gonna be strong. And I think it's so important that for non-Black people, you call it out and rectify it. For Black people, you come from a position of strength and empowerment. I think that's very important for Black people. Like, when we speak about racism, it's not to just say, oh, the world is bad and against us. Like, no, learn the game. Learn the game to overcome it.
Okay, so now we're gonna go onto the questions. So there's quite a few. So people have liked the ones that they want answered the most. So the first question on there is, what can I do if my family is Black but self-hating and still discriminating against other Black people, putting other ethnic groups on a pedestal? So
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think where I will want to come on in that is, so when you speak to your parents, I feel like it's a difficult one, just because this is something I actually always say, just because parents, they can sometimes always think they're right and there's nothing going to take them off of that. So I've kind of developed some strategies just to speak to parents, speaking to my parents, and just generally. So I feel like if there's something problematic that is said, I really think about, is this the best time to speak on it? Because sometimes it may just blow up into an argument. You may not be able to speak on it right there and then. So I make a note of it, either physically or mentally, and then I try and return to the conversation when everybody's in a better mood, and then try and look at it. I may not reference the exact same instance, because they may be like, oh, so you're recording everything we're saying, basically. No, around the same subject topic essentially, and then I speak on it, and we speak on it when in a better mood to try and get to the crux, right? Sometimes, regardless of if people are in a good mood or not, it's like, no, we can't, this isn't, try and say it in a respectful way, of course, but you say, no, this isn't something that we should be saying or doing, or I really disagree with this. There are phrases you can use. Or another one, if there are things which your family likes, or your parents like, clean the dishes, do something nice which is going to butter them up a little bit, then you come to the conversation. I found just with parents, sometimes come in straight on like this, it's not always the thing that brings the best results. So that's what I'd say. But in terms of the other ethnic group bits, I think it depends on how practicing your family is. You know, does referencing evidences, reference hadith verses, is that going to make a difference? I know, so for example, some Nigerians have something against Jamaicans, for example. I know Somalis sometimes, you know, they're very, it's like, if you're not Somali, then we don't really, you know, we don't really gel with you. There's all sorts of kind of things that are coming on. But I think, you know, if they are practicing, you can reference text and actually show them that this is the way we should be thinking. If not, I think sometimes, you know, a really useful tactic is to show how do you like it when people use stereotypes against us, right? And also it should be put forward to them that these narratives that they're embodying, that a lot of them are kind of like white supremacist narratives, in terms of like, these are racist narratives that are used against you, that you're embodying and using against another group of people who, you know, look similar to us, right? And it's not right. So there's different strategies. I think it really depends on the background of your parents and their temperament, their character, all sorts of things. You know, it's case by case, basically. So.
Okay, before anyone carries on, I just want to say that Naima has to leave now, but I just want everyone to say a big thank you to her for taking part in this panel discussion, because she's actually been amazing. And I put the link to her books in the chat box, so you can check out her books on there. But yeah, she has to leave now. If you have anything to add, Naima.
No, just want to say, may Allah reward everybody who put this together, and my brothers Ayo and Momodou, Jazakumullah khairan, and Sister Fatia, Sister Sarah, and everyone behind the scenes. May Allah reward you with the best for your intentions, and may this be the first of many conversations. We need to have healing conversations, guys. This is a big part of the work that I do. We have so much healing to do in our community. Forget the whole world. Just within our community, whether it's on a race level, gender level, generational, we need to create more safe spaces where people can speak freely and people can listen, you know, with open ears and an open heart. So thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this. I'm on Instagram, Naima B. Robert, and would love to connect with you guys there, inshallah. But I've got a writing workshop that I've got to go to now. So I will see you, inshallah, the next time that we get together. Jazakallah khairan.
Bye. Okay, so if someone can share the questions again and we'll carry on. I'll read out the second question.
Okay.
Unless anyone had anything to add to that question that we just had.
No, I think Ayo hit the nail on the head, man.
Okay, so the second type question we had says, what can we as Arab/Asian Muslims do to better support the Black Muslim community on an Isoc local and national level? Sorry,
I think that's what he's the closest guy.
Feel free to feed in as well, especially on the local and national level, bro. But I think wait, could you just go back to the question's still there. I think we've spoken on a lot of it already, to be honest, but I think it's discussions I think are very important. Signing up your Isoc or your Masajid to workshops as well, I think is very important. I know Fosis, as we said, does one for Isocs, but there are other organizations who do good stuff. Black Muslim Forum is a really good organization. They've actually got a school which teaches Black Muslim history to young children, and they do other bits and bobs as well. So please look into them. But I think it's really, I think introspection and being sincere and genuine is part of it, and actively changing your structures. You know, so go in, you know, if you can join your masjid board committee or ISOC committee, do that and really keep drawing them to the fact that shaking things up, say, you know, drawing light to the fact that it's our responsibility as Muslims to you know, speak on social justice issues and to take this issue seriously and to listen to our Black Muslim brothers and sisters. Because yeah, I just keep thinking back to the George Floyd kind of time period where I was seeing a lot of frustration and anger on the TL, and a lot of people were saying, you know, why are Black Muslims or Black people reacting like this? And you've got to think about it in this way, that people have put forward their points politely, they've done it nicely, they've said it, and it's kind of like it's just been going into the void, right? I was kind of surprised as well that why is it taking this for so many people to realize this is a serious issue? And I feel like it comes down to the fact that people haven't opened their ears and their hearts to the feelings of their Black brothers and sisters. And I think it's really important that we start doing that. So I feel like once that sincerity is there and that introspection is happening, and once you're engaging with those structures, it's going to be push and shove. There's one hadith that I really remember, by the way, just before I pass on to Momodou, is that on the day of judgment, there's going to be a man who'll be questioned, and he'll be questioned where he was in a situation where people are backbiting, right? And everyone, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to essentially ask him, why didn't you stop them backbiting? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to say, you didn't stop them because your fear of the people and how they would react overrided your fear for me. And this is what we have to think when we're in these situations where it could be the elders or your friends or whoever or your parents who's pushing back at you. You need to, when you get that anxiety in your heart, you need to think about, actually, I know what I'm doing is right. And I'm doing it with good intentions, and I'm doing it because it is just, and I'm doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? When you think of those things, that should push you and override those feelings, right? It will be nerve-wracking. It's not going to be comfortable. Like they always say, uncomfortable situations and conversations. But we're not going to get movement without that. That's why you are seeing the frustration, because Black people and Black Muslims have been speaking on this for so long, and it's just going into the void. And you need to know that it takes a lot, to be calm and to be, relaxed about these things. I know probably myself, I think it was said before, I seem quite like I'm nice about these things, but I'm very angry all the time about these things. I'll be honest with you, because it's always in your face. I can't tell you the amount of times it hurts when you see your Black brother and sister be like, bro, you just need to calm down, man. And then the vein in my head's just popping. I'm like, what do you mean by that? So we need to be proactive and actually listen, be emotionally intelligent, and listen to people around you, inshallah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, bro. I feel like at a local, national, and international level, there's so many strategies. There's so many ways to support Muslims, and I'm not going to come with a kind of one method fits all. But the road I always take, I try to get involved in the role of education. And I feel like the Black Muslim experience is not separate from the wider Black experience. And the wider Black experience can be understood. This is why I tell people to just get educated on racism. People feel like racism, okay, yeah, I know what racism is. Of course I do. It's just prejudice. No, racism is so much more deeper than that. And like, you cannot tell the story of modern day nation states without telling the story of racism. So I recommend the book to start off with is Introduction to Critical Race Theory by Richard Delgado. I'll post it in the comments before in this chat, inshallah. I just give an overview of what CRT is, critical race theory. In short, critical race theory is a theory in how we understand racism in the modern world. It kind of came, just a background, it came out of a group of academics in the 80s who basically were looking at the structures in society and saying that if we have laws that make discrimination illegal, if we have laws that that promote diversity and that promote fairness and equality, why hasn't it been achieved at institutional level? And that's what critical race theory is. And then that's why, very unfortunate, you get scholars or quote unquote scholars say critical race theory is kufr or critical race theory is haram. Clearly they haven't read a book about what critical race theory is, because all it is just a theory that says, how do you understand racism in the modern world? So I would say that if people are actually serious about supporting Black people and being actively anti-racist, then educate yourself on race. And I would say start with CRT, which is critical race theory. I think you're muted, Fatiha. I think you're muted.
Okay. Before we move on to a different question, someone briefly touched about one of the speakers, I think it was you, Ayo, you touched upon like being an angry Black man, or like being described as an angry Black man. And I think there was a question on that. So let me try and find it. So it says, how do we deal with and call out microaggressions as Black Muslims without falling into the false angry Black person stereotype?
Okay, it's an interesting question. I think for me, I think anger is a valid emotion, right? Frustration, they're valid emotions. Personally, I when I'm dealing with anything, and I think for me, I like to zoom out of some of the identity stuff. So it helps me know how to deal with all of these identities and structures. And there's a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ which speaks about, a strong man is not one who is able to wrestle essentially, or take on like big load. It's someone who wrestles themselves in a fit of rage. Do you get it? So I feel for me, it's I'm trying to explain it, but I always want to deliver my message, trying to emulate the Prophet, peace be upon him, right? There's a lot of different people who are doing good work, who are putting things across in a good way, but that's always the lens I want to be doing it through. And it's not that I'm trying to avoid the label of an angry black man, because I can act in any way. I show a bit of passion, and that's the label that's going to be imprinted in me. But I wrestle with my anger and my frustration because of the Prophet, peace be upon him's inspiration, but also I know that emotion as one to sort of constantly feed off of. It's like, it's corrosive, right? I've used that as a fuel before, and it is corrosive. It's something which can eat away at you, and it's not, personally, I haven't found it to be good for my mental health, my spiritual health. So it's a valid emotion, and it's one that I feel, but it's one that I often try to wrestle with, and I try not to let it define the way I react to things. But if I am angry, yes, I'll be angry at something, and I may have the right to be. It's justified, but that's how I kind of look at stuff. Even just calling out microaggressions is very, for me, I look at it very, very case by case. So what was the intention of the person, or if I can tell them what the intention is, how did they come across to me, right? What was the tone that they used? Were they being ignorant in terms of they just didn't know, or they're being malicious? For me, bringing all these things together allow me to be able to respond. If I know someone's being malicious, I may respond a bit more harshly, a lot more harshly, and a lot more firmly. If I know that this person, they're just ignorant, then I'll speak to them and try to show them why what they said is problematic. So these are just some of the ways, but I know not everybody would do it that way. But for me, these are things I think help me keep my heart clean when I'm approaching these issues. So yeah. And last thing, actually, sorry, just before you comment, Momodou, is I always try and think of because I've been in lots of situations where I feel like people are intentionally trying to provoke me, right? Constantly. And sometimes, not to say you don't reply, but certain emotions I'd rather not show to people because it's giving them what they want, especially when it comes to microaggressions in the workplace or within, your uni mates or classmates, whoever it may be. And so, there are different alternatives you can use. Maybe, if someone's really said something, like, just report them. You don't even need to reply to them. If there's an avenue to report it, just report it. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to, because I've clocked it. There's sometimes people want that reaction from you, and they want you to blow up so they can say, yeah, I knew you fit my stereotype. I knew this, I knew that. And sometimes looking for those alternative methods that allows you to deal with the issue, but you don't show everything how you're feeling. But I think even letting go of anger as well, like sometimes, go on a run, take up boxing or a martial art or gym, something that's because the aggression is gonna stay there, by the way, and you need to get rid of it. Very, very important you get rid of it. So that's just my bit. So I've gone on for a little bit now, but yeah.
No, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna disagree a bit there, in the sense that and by the way, I'm not suggesting you're saying this at all. I'm just perhaps what may be interpreted. I don't think it is for the person doing the act of prejudice to dictate how I react to it. How I react to you in perpetrating an act of prejudice is up to me. Yeah, because naturally, people are gonna say you're an angry black person if you're just merely passionate. Merely speaking in a certain way makes people feel uncomfortable. I find in places your mere presence as a confident black person is intimidating for people. So how far for me do I have to erode that identity? Do I have to, okay, don't be an angry black person because it might just make them win. Then, okay, don't be too loud. Then it's gonna be don't be too loud next. Or don't be too passionate because of, I feel like it erodes. For me, I think we've gone past, for me personally, this is why I posted this yesterday on Twitter. I think we've gone past respectability politics. This idea of we need to show like, okay, I do believe 100%, it's context specific. And I always use Malcolm X as a brilliant example. When he was on white TV, he's the most calm, even any question they throw at him that's even triggering his calm. He's calm, intellectual, because that context demands that from him. But when he's like, when a black person gets killed, he's angry, and rightfully so, and people who are even trying to speak ill of this black person, he responds angrily. I think it's just context specific as to how you react, basically. In terms of how to deal with microaggressions, I would just say, I always personally, my route is, first of all, how the person said it and what was exactly said, obviously, context specific. But I always try to use every moment like this as a moment to teach someone, personally. So like, if say, like, I don't know, let's say example of, so where are you really from? That's a common one. Where are you really from? Then, I'll just be like, I'll say, okay, what do you mean by really? What made you assume that I'm not from here? Why did you say where are you really from, for example? Or and again, I think there is a line that we have to. It's like the discussion on cultural appropriation versus appreciation. Some questions are born out of a genuine inquisitiveness for something, where some questions there's like an underhanded prejudice underneath it, and it's very difficult sometimes to discern between the two. But I found that after some time of, if you're in this kind of campaigning against racism, you kind of, after a while, you kind of can almost get a sixth sense to where these people are coming from. If it's like your friend asking a question or someone you're intimate with, then of course, it's not meant in any harm. It's a genuine inquisitiveness. If it's someone you don't know and they're coming a bit aggressive with it, or the way it's said, for example, the tone of it, then obviously you call it out.
Okay. Is that, like, do any of you guys have anything else to add for that question? Or should we move on to a different one?
It's all good, yeah.
No, it's good, yeah.
Okay, so I think we've answered the one after that. So we'll go on to this question for Ayel. So it says, how did you find Islam and how did your family react to you reverting? And Barakallah Feek for all your amazing points you have raised.
It's funny, this question got slipped in with other ones. I mean, I'm not going to go into it too much, but just long story short, justice has always been something I feel like I've some way, shape or form been concerned with, and especially when I came to university, it was something. So actually, I guess what got me into activism was, I'm sure Momodou, you remember this. So Alton Sterling was killed one night. Then the next day, Philando Castile was killed on Facebook Live in front of his daughter. The first day, Alton Sterling, I was just it really shook me, but I was like, I can't do anything. Like, I'm useless. I'm just here. Then when the Alton Sterling, the Philando Castile thing happened the next day, it's like a switch in my head just flicked, and I was like, I need to do something. I need to get involved. So I went on marches, I went on different things, and I felt like I was exerting so much energy all the time. I was getting involved in different movements, always fighting for social justice. But I'll be honest with you, I felt something was missing, right, in terms of the spiritual aspect, and it fed into wider stuff, just in terms of like, I just felt like life itself was empty. Like, I didn't really so much believe in a God so much, and I was really curious as to like, how can we as people just go about our daily like business without like having something that centers us. And I looked in different religions, and I was originally raised Christian, but I never would have said I was Christian, if that makes sense. And I stumbled upon Islam, and when I was researching into it more and more and more, it just was gelling with me. There was stuff I didn't understand, or to be honest, I didn't agree with straight away, to be honest with you, but it just, overall, it was just gelling with me. And I think that's also like, before I was Muslim, feeling into how I am now in terms of that social justice aspect. I just saw that that's inherent within Islam, bringing justice, whether it be justice to your siblings, justice to your parents, justice to people around you, justice to Black people, justice to people, everybody, right? For me, this is the thing, and Momodou, I know you spoke about critical race theory. There's also feminist theory, different things out there. I would actually say that if you can take it anyway, like, it's important to understand these things and know these things. But personally, from my own study of these things, this is before I was Muslim, there were things in there which I don't think per se were the best thing for my soul or my my outlook on life, or it spoke to the parts of me which is not all of it, by the way. I think there are useful things in some of these disciplines out there, but where I am now is that Islam helps me reconcile, and just the way Islam is a filter for culture, I see it as a filter for some of the things in these theories as well. So that's kind of how I see stuff. And it's how, you know, Islam for me is inherent within social justice. And it's the way I filter things, it's the way I see the world, it's the lens which I view the world, right? And so in terms of my family reacting, obviously they weren't happy. But one thing they can see is that I am the best version of myself that as I ever have been, right? And it's not to toot my own horn or anything. It's just more that I've had the spiritual framework, and I think the social framework as well, political framework, to be able to engage with the world around me, essentially. So that's long story short, essentially. I don't want to go on too much about myself, but yeah, sure.
Okay, Jazakallah. So it's now 1:15. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring in Laman, if she's still here. I think she is. So if you could turn on your mic and your camera. So I think we should be closing up. Like, I really don't want to end anytime soon because there's so many more questions, and I would have loved to like hear your inputs on them, but we have to end sometime or another. So I'm gonna hand over to Laman to like end.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Jazakallah khair, so much to all of you. It's been so beneficial. Jazakallah khair for everyone for attending, and may Allah reward you all. I hope everyone's benefited from it as much as I have. I just wanted to come on here just to quickly introduce myself. My name is Laman, and I'm this year's welfare lead. Just to quickly plug myself, welfare lead at Isoc, at manchesterisoc.com if you guys have any questions or want to get in contact with me. But I just wanted to thank you all for attending today's event, and I hope it's been of benefit to everyone. May Allah reward our speakers. Thank you so much for so eloquently educating us about everything. But yeah, that's all. Thank you so much to everyone. Yeah.
Jazakallah, I appreciate it.
Oh, is that done yet? Oh, cool. I'm there like, okay, cool. Thank you so much for the organizers, man. I really appreciate you inviting me. I'm going to do a shameless plug as well. Find me on Instagram as The Gambian. I posted it. And also, please subscribe to my podcast, The Malcolm Effect, which is on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music and Apple Podcasts as well. The Malcolm Effect.
Jazakallah, everybody. May Allah reward all of you, and may Allah guide us towards right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much again, guys, for attending. So yeah, your links are in the description. So if anyone has any other questions, yeah, their apps are in the description. Laman, put your email in there as well, so people can contact you as well, and maybe you too, Sarah. But yeah, again, Jazakallah khair, like, thank you so much. It was so beneficial having you guys. I learned a lot myself, and I'm sure everyone else has too. I know that because they've said it in the comments, but yeah, thanks again so much.
يا الطارش يا المعنى خط بكتابك بترحيبه لو سراب